Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, we're back with another recap episode on a Sunday. Unfortunately, we're talking about USC's first loss of the season. The Trojans are now 2-1 on the year. Cody, how are you doing after this first loss?
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling a little better now. Very frustrating. It's been a rough 24 hours, but as a player, you're always taught the 24-hour rule, right? Where you can reflect on it a little bit, whether a win or a loss, and you can let it affect you and be emotional. But after that, you want to put it behind you. Now, obviously, we're doing a podcast, so we've got to talk about it a little bit more. But this is kind of our, as you like to call it, the empty the notebook podcast. Just talk about all
Therapy
the
session sometimes.
yeah, it really is, and just kind of talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly on both sides of the football. But there were still a lot of positives. There's a lot of good takeaways from this game. There's also a lot of concerns and things that happened that I think need to be addressed. And then there are obviously some things with officiating that were out of USC's control that I think played a major factor. But overall, I mean, I think it's important to talk about. But after this, I want to put it behind us and move on. There's still a lot to play for this year. The sky isn't falling. It's not the end of the world. There's still a chance to play for the Big Ten championship. There's still a chance to be a playoff contender this year. So again, not everything falling apart for USC, but there are some concerns I think we need to talk about.
For sure. We'll definitely break it all down. We also have a lot of questions to get to, so we will be sure to answer those as well. Before we get into it, just want to give a couple of reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are VictoryPodUSC. And I mentioned last episode, you can send us a text. Some people actually did, Cody. So some people found it. If you're an audio listener, you can go in your podcasting app and click the button that says send us a text. We love hearing from you guys as well. Alrighty, Cody, let's jump into it. First off, I just want to kind of talk overall thoughts. I feel like kind of need to have a state of the union a little bit when it comes to USC's first loss. And especially I think when USC fans' expectations were so high coming into this game. Overall, did this game and what you saw change how you feel about this USC team?
I'm torn. Overall, no. I don't think it changed my perspective on this football team. I think we knew who this team is, right? But I think that the expectations skyrocketed after the first two games, right? And then we
Yeah.
had a bye week to kind of let all that sink in. It wasn't a game back to back to back, right? It kind of marinated a little bit like, okay, this team might be for real, right? And I think they still have a chance to be very good this year. But going off of those first two games, I still think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think Michigan answered some of those questions or I guess really posed some more questions that we didn't have about this team that maybe we thought were answered through the first 2 weeks. But no, I mean, I'm not going to change my perspective. I think we still have one of the best head coaches in the country calling our offense and leading this football team. I think Dan Lynn is still one of the best defense coordinators in the country. I think we have very good football players on both sides of the football. I do have some concerns at areas on this team that I think were a lot more obvious on Saturday or yesterday than before, on the offensive side of the ball, and we'll get more into detail on that when we talk, on both sides of the football and get more into the context of everything. But offensively, I thought Miller played well. He showed his toughness, right? He took a lot of hits. He took a lot of hits that most guys
Yeah.
don't get back up from or might have to come out or might, wave the white flag and sit out. He showed how tough he is, that he can take those hits and keep bouncing back and make big time throws. I do think he started trying to do a little too much and maybe forcing some throws there or forcing some RPOs instead of just handing it off and trying to make the big time play. And then obviously had that pick six that we'll kind of break down in a little bit. But outside of that, I thought Woody Marks played great. Our running back room, Quentin Joyner had 3 carries, so we didn't get to see a ton from him. But I think Woody Marks played very well. Great football player. I love having him on our team. I think outside on wide receiver, we had a couple drops here and there that affected us. That kind of carried over from Utah State. Tight end wise, Laken McCree, that was a big time loss, and you hate to see that. That's tough. And obviously, Kate Eldridge came in. Walker Lyons played a little bit. Now, my biggest concern on offense, and I think obviously a lot of Trojan fans that watch the game know this, was the offensive line. I was very, very concerned with how they were going to be. And you and I have talked about that before. And again, I think week 1 and week 2.
It was in our preview. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about what this offensive line is going to look like, and we'll kind of break down how that rotation played out. But that is somewhere for me going forward that needs to be fixed quickly, especially in the Big Ten. And then if you flip side, defensive side of the football, I thought the defense played great. I really do, and I still feel that way. Obviously outside of a couple big plays, they did a great job of containing Michigan. Look, they ran the ball 46 times. there's going to be a lot of yards added up from that. There's going to be some big time plays. It's like the old saying, you run a 3 yard, a 3 yard, a 3 yard, and then a big play is going to break. And again, we knew it was coming. Everyone in the stadium knew it was coming. We just had to get it stopped. And unfortunately, we didn't make those plays when it mattered most. But I don't have, and it's tough to talk about the secondary when there's only 12 pass attempts and 39 yards. So I
Yeah.
think overall, as a coverage in the back end was fine. But we'll focus more on this episode of the front seven, and then kind of my final overview, and we'll get into it here in a second, is just the officiating, right? And I hate talking about things that are out of our control, right? Because at the end of the day, you got to block all that out and go perform. But I do think there were some momentum changing calls that affected the outcome of this game. And again, you're not going to win and lose a football game because of an officiating call or because of some officiating calls, but they absolutely play a factor. And I think that was kind of and since we've been covering USC, from what I can remember, I think that was one of the very first times that I remember really being frustrated with officiating and thinking, if some of these calls went a different way, would this outcome be different? But again, overall, my perspective doesn't change of this team. That was a kind of a quick, or I guess a little dragged out overview, but we'll get into kind of the context of all that. But yeah, it's just, like I said, I'm emptying everything. I'm going to get it all out today. So once we move on, I can put the Michigan game behind us and we can focus on Wisconsin.
Now, I know the AP poll is not the end all be all, but USC dropped only 2 spots. I say only because everyone in my Twitter mentions, was expecting, I think, the worst, but they went from 11 to 13. Michigan moved up to 12. So I feel like from a national perspective, people kind of saw that as I'll ask you, Cody, what did you take away from the AP poll putting USC at 13?
No, and I think you're on the right track there. I know you're going with that. I think people from the outside looking in saw that this USC football team is still for real. I still believe that. Now, do I think we are at the level of Texas or Georgia or Alabama or some of these teams that are the top 5 in the country that are good year in and year out and national contenders every year? Time will tell. It's tough to say right now that we're at that level yet, right? And that's the biggest argument that I saw as well was, Texas is number 1 now, or they're number 3, or they're bounced around, whatever they are. They played so well against Michigan. Michigan struggled. Like, yeah, okay, that was a different Saturday, though. You can't, the same Michigan team's not going to show up every week. But I do believe that Texas is in a tier above USC and Michigan and some of these teams that are starting to get to that area. Now, I know Michigan won a national championship a year ago, but they have a huge turnover from last year to this year. And then the other thing that it tells me, and this might be, me just kind of reading between the lines, or maybe not, and maybe it's just an outside thought, but I don't want to say committee because that's not what it is. Whoever votes on the AP poll, did the press see it as, okay, there were some missed calls that affected that football game, or USC should have won that football game. And if they play that 10 more times, does USC win a majority of them? So I think those are 2 ways that the Associated Press looked at that when it came to rankings. But like I said, it's not the end of the world. The sky isn't falling. We still have a ton to play for this year. And that's the beauty of a 12-team playoff, is we're not out of it by any means. Maybe a year ago or in previous seasons, it might have been over, right, to be a top 4 team to go to the playoff. But now it's 12-team playoffs. We're in a very competitive conference. So you don't, necessarily have to win the conference to play at that next level or to get to those playoff games. But overall, I still have a lot of optimism, and I think the sky's the limit for this football team. And I think this is going to be a great learning lesson when we look back at the end of the year.
Now, on that note, let's head into the offense. We previewed how Michigan likes to play the game, how they kind of want to dictate what you do, and you previewed what USC should do on offense based on that. How did that compare to what we saw on Saturday?
Yeah, and this is, again, you're going to see me looking right. I got a ton of notes. I just, for a little more background, I watched the game yesterday. I watched it again last night. I recorded it, and then I watched it again this morning just to try to get some extra things. So I've got a ton of notes, and I'm just going to say or talk about it from a perspective of, I'm sitting in a meeting room on Monday saying these were the keys to the game. Now, I don't know if this was Lincoln Riley's keys to the game or the keys to the game for the football team, but from what we talked about here on the Victory podcast, and did we successfully, attack those goals or complete those goals? So for me, the biggest thing that we had to do in this football game, and this was my first key to the game, or one of my biggest one, is we had to start fast, right? And I thought it was going to be so important to get a lead and to play from ahead, as a football team when you play Michigan, right? Their style of football, especially with Alex Orji in there at quarterback, is that they want to slow it down. They want to run the football. They want to go 12, 15 play drives and take time off the clock, keep your offense off the field, and then get a lead so they can slow everything down and they don't have to throw to catch up. If you would have asked me, the opposite of my keys of the game, what would be a recipe for disaster to start this football game? 14-0 in the middle of the second quarter, Michigan ahead, would have probably been at the top of that list. That was just something that could not have happened. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, there was a lot of arguments, and I'm on board with this, right? And Lincoln Riley admitted it himself, right? He could have handled situations better. I think we played very conservative to start this football game, but there are some reasons for that. A big part of that is because of the starting field position, right? I think 3 of our first 6 or 7 drives, we started within our own 10-yard line, right? The first drive was on what? We started on the 7-yard line, I think, to start
Yes.
the game. Yeah,
Yes.
somewhere around there. So that already is difficult to overcome, especially in a way atmosphere and 110,000 fans screaming, yelling, going crazy. First ever conference game, right? So there's so many other factors outside of that. And now you have your heels on your own end zone to start the game, or 3 of the first 6 drives are terrible field position. That makes it difficult. So I think that plays into the conservative play calling by Lincoln Riley. And why he did that is because nothing is worse to start the football game than having a turnover, right? Or having a false start, or having unforced errors, or having things that get the crowd even more pumped up when the kickoff begins, because that's when the crowd's most excited or when they get a little momentum. But to already put yourself at a disadvantage there by having a silly turnover, in your own red zone, or the opposing team's red zone going out, right? Backed up on your own in your own territory is an absolute killer. And now you start 7-0 off a quick turnover, and the crowd's even more involved. So that can't happen. So I understand the conservative part of that in the first half, from that standpoint. And then the other side of it, I think on the conservative side is I think Lincoln saw pretty early on that we were struggling in pass protection when we did try to throw the football, right? It was something that was very frustrating from beginning to end. And obviously we made some changes there in the second half, but it was very frustrating to try to push the ball down the field or buy some time for Miller Moss and see your quarterback on his back almost every play, right? And that happened a lot early on in this football game, especially in the first half. And we also had some drops, right, with Kyron Hudson on one of the first drive. That would have been a
Yeah.
different outcome because now we get a fresh set of downs. We're outside the 10-yard line. We can get our playbook opens up, because when you're backed up, your playbook goes from here to about here. There's only a certain
Yeah.
amount of calls or plays that you can call. So I don't want to say it all on this first topic. I know we got a lot of questions, but for me, kind of overall looking at the offense and the conservative side, and starting this football game, we did not do what we needed to do for the keys of the game. And that was start fast, get the lead, and play our style of football.
As a play caller, what options do you have when you realize relatively quick into the game that you can't pass block as well as you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, and it is. It's accountability hour, right? That's kind of what our podcast is, and talking about players, and it's no surprise, but we struggled at left tackle, right? Elijah Page was struggling. He's still a young player. I still think he has an opportunity to be good. I think he's going to need more reps and more consistency to get to that next level. We've seen flashes of how good he can be, but when you can't protect at left tackle, when you have a very good defensive line, right? Josiah Stewart from Michigan, number 0, very good pass rusher. He was really hurting us on both sides of the football, but Page struggled on that left side, your quarterback's blind side, when you have a right-handed quarterback. It scares you as a play caller and as a quarterback, because he can't see that hit coming, right? You don't want to get your quarterback hurt. And when they're teeing off on Miller, even when he's getting the ball out, or even on the offsides penalty where we got a free play and he's still getting hit, it seemed like the first half he was getting hit almost every time he dropped back, or if he wasn't, there was pressure in his face. And that, seeing that as a play caller, makes you hesitant of wanting to keep throwing the football, right? But that's why I got to give credit to Miller. He hung in there tough, and allowed us to do that in the second half, and we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it closes up your playbook, right? But I think what we could have done is we went more so to quick screens, to
Mhm.
running the football. I would have liked to see a little bit more quick game, little slant throws, maybe, or bring in an extra player in protection, right? If Elijah Page struggling, bring in Cade Eldridge or Laken McCree before the injury and keep him in protection. Go 6-man pro or 7-man pro with a running back. Allow Woody Marks or Quentin Joyner to chip on their way out and slow down these edge rushers that are getting to Miller, or slide protection and just build a wall up front, and allow Miller to throw a quick game and get the ball out quickly. But it just felt like when we were trying to get into a rhythm, it was a run on the interior of the defensive line, which was not happening because they had 2 very good defensive tackles in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. And I've got to give credit right there too. Kenneth Grant is a phenomenal football player. He shut down the middle of that deep.
Yeah.
We know Mason Graham is going to be a first-round pick. Kenneth Grant is up there as well, but he did a great job on the interior of the defensive line. And again, it's the opponent, but you got to give credit where credit is due. But our recipe seemed to try to run the football in the middle of the field, right? And run, a lot more inside zone plays. And that just wasn't working. So then when we tried to get on the edge, we were struggling at tackle a little bit. And then when we tried to throw the football, Miller was getting hit. So back to your original question, I understand that it's tough as a play caller to get in a rhythm when it feels like really nothing's working, but you have to be able to keep pressing and keep doing those things. Go to quick game, get the ball out a little bit quicker. If the screens aren't working, and some of them did hit, right? Some of those screen plays hit, and some of those zone read run plays did start to hit in the second half, but we just couldn't find that rhythm early on in this football game. And like I talked about, the recipe to beat Michigan is force them to play from behind. And if we can't get into a rhythm early on and we can't figure out with those in-game adjustments, what we need to do or the best way to attack this defense, and we fall behind 14-0, we did a good job of coming back, but it makes it almost nearly impossible to beat a team like Michigan when you play into their style of football.
Yeah, one of the solutions that USC's coaches had came at the second half. They had Tobias Raymond come in at right tackle and then moved Mason Murphy over to left tackle. How did you think that new configuration worked in the second half?
Yeah, we actually, Keely and I texted at halftime, and you asked me. I mean, we thought of scenarios. What do we do? Obviously we've got to figure out how to get this fixed, and it's tough to blame one player, and the coaching staff sees it, a lot better than the rest of us at home, or when they watch the film, or they know what the responsibilities are for each player, and they felt that was the best way to go, right? And I said, do you even asked, do we move Jonah Monheim outside a little bit to help out? Do we do different things? And those were all possibilities, right? But I love that the coaching staff understood that and they swallowed their pride a little bit, or they didn't, they said, hey, we got to get this fixed and get it fixed now. And that was their move to bring in a freshman and Tobias Raymond at right tackle, who I thought played well, right? He had a couple issues in pass protection, which is expected. But when you go into a game off a bench, especially after not playing the whole first half, and then you play in that environment and you don't have a lot of experience behind you to go out there and play. I thought he played well. I think he deserved more playing time. I think he earned more reps going forward. Now, he had that false start penalty on the second to last drive, which was a little frustrating, but that's going to happen as a freshman. But I thought Mason Murphy did better. I mean, that's tough too, from being in a pass blocking stance at right tackle, right, to having your right foot back, left foot forward, and then you switch sides, and now you're
Yeah.
playing on the opposite side, and everything, your kick step, your drop step, everything changes. Pass blocking, run blocking, everything changes mid game is not easy to do, right? And I know as a fan at home, it's like, hey, just go over there and figure it out. You're still blocking, but it's tough to switch sides. So for them to be able to do that and then see some success in the second half, I think it paid dividends, right? With that first drive of the second half was the best our offense looked the entire night. And it kind of goes back to my first point of, playing a conservative, not really letting Miller let it loose. And I think Lincoln Riley at halftime had that talk with his team and said, hey, Tobias, you're coming in at right tackle. Mason, you're going to left tackle. Hey, Elijah, sorry, bud, it's not your game today. We'll figure it out. We'll go to practice and compete. But today, this is what we're going to do. And he called Miller over and said, hey, we're going to let it rip the second half. We got to figure this out. That's exactly what they did. That second drive, or that first drive coming out at halftime, we went 12 plays, 75 yards, touchdown, right? I think 4 or 5 minute drive. That was the best our offense looked the entire day. That was kind of my keys to the game point of let Miller, cut it loose. Let it be the Miller show, right? We can run the football a little bit here and there, but they've struggled covering on the back end for Michigan's defense this year. And Miller threw the ball 10 times on that 12-play drive, and I think he completed 8 of them. I think it was 8 of 10 for a beautiful touchdown pass to Deuce Robinson, and that was really the answer, but that was the offensive line as well, kind of figuring it out on that drive and giving Miller time. So I'm not the coach. I'm not Coach Henson. I'm not Lincoln Riley. I'm not going to make those decisions going forward. But how that game ended with Tobias Raymond at right tackle and Mason Murphy at left tackle, I think you have to at least look at that this week in practice as maybe the potential starting line going forward and seeing how that 5 works with each other.
Yeah, we actually got multiple questions about that. Joe Osorio said, do you think they'll keep the second half offensive line moving forward or revert to the starting lineup? Thought the second half group opened up the run game well. Eager to hear your thoughts. And Judy said, what is the outlook for offensive line development? I mean, an 8 out of 100 PFF grade for pass blocking seems bad. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I'm with you. I think, and that's a good point too. I just talked about how they look better in pass protection. They did open up some stuff in the run game. It felt like that second unit of offensive line in the second half got more of a surge up front in the run game as well, right? We saw Woody Marks break open a huge run. We saw Quentin Joyner come in and have some big time runs. So I agree. I think that going forward, you have to at least start them out this week in practice, right? See how Tobias Raymond does with preparation as a starter. See if he fits. See if he can get in a rhythm. And I think you give him that opportunity next week. Maybe keep the left tackle position open for competition, whether it's Mason Murphy, whether it's Elijah Page, and let those guys compete. But if I'm Lincoln Riley going into this week, that unit that we saw in the second half needs to be at least a starting line going into this prep, and their starting offense line going into the prep. And then if they look good this week in practice, let them keep going, right? And you know, that's something you have to make, and that's going to happen throughout the season, whether it's O-line, running back, wide receiver, quarterback, linebacker. If you're not getting the job done, if the unit doesn't look good, you have to make changes. And you know, Lincoln did that, and they look better. So I think you go with that, and then yeah, Judy, I am very hesitant because I don't fully know the criteria with some of those PFF rankings. And it's nothing against them. It's just tough to how do you really rank some of these things? But that was a stat to me that I think was correct and it stood out. And you saw, you know, how Miller had some not injuries, but he was slow to get up on some of those plays. And you hate as a former quarterback to see the quarterback getting hit over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And when I watched the game back 2 and 3 times, it wasn't that we weren't doing a good job of communicating or being in the right spot. It was just we were losing so fast off the line of scrimmage at the point of attack, right? It was taking our first step. And again, I'm not going to call people out by name. We've already done that enough, but taking that first step and already getting whiffed and run by, right? To where Miller, even if it was quick game, like I advocated for a little bit ago, would still probably have gotten the ball out, but he was going to get hit, right? And there were times that Miller could have thrown it away. There were times that pass protection was decent and it looked good and he could have thrown it away and he tried to scramble a little bit or you know he made a bad play worse by taking a hit when it could have just been okay, you know, that's a loss on this play, throw it away. But yeah, the 8 out of 100 was, like I said, I'm not a big fan of those rankings, but I think that's accurate. And my final thing I'll say about the offensive line and you know kind of the concerns that we talked about in the Big Ten, you have to be able to dominate in the trenches on both sides of the football. So as an offense, I think we have great playmakers. I think Miller is starting to develop into a very good quarterback. He obviously is going to still need some more experience, and he's continued to trend in the right direction. Outside, we have playmakers, right? Obviously, Makai Lemon taking that hit, and we'll talk about that in the penalties again a little bit later. But again, praying for him, hope he's okay, and you know, losing him and losing Laken McCree as well is going to hurt us a little bit. But overall, we have great
Yeah.
playmakers on the outside. And I mean this when I say this, we are only going to go as far as this offensive line will take us, right? We are going, and Michigan has a very good defensive line, right? They have 2 first-round picks on the interior. I think Josiah Stewart is one of the best pass rushers in the conference. I just don't know if they're the best defensive line we're going to face going forward. I think Penn State is up there. I think there's some very good defensive lines that we're going to face, especially if we go to the Big Ten championship or the playoff, that can be as good or even better as Michigan. So if we don't get this fixed very fast, and what I mean by very fast is this week or the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a very long season for this offense, and it's going to be tough to keep Miller healthy.
So what does that look like? What is getting fixed very fast? What options do you have in season to do that?
So one of the things you can do, and you know, it's tough to do that. I mean, the most obvious is just more reps, right? Consistency. But now we talk about continuity. Now we've just seen an entire new 5 starting line. I mean, obviously only one different player comes in with Tobias Raymond, but now you move Mason Murphy to left tackle. The interior stays the same, but now you've got to hurry up and build that consistency with them. So that's a huge part of it is just reps, 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 trusting the guy next to you, learning how to get better, better teaching, better technique, right? I know Josh Henson is one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. He's got to find a way now to challenge himself to make these guys better, to get these younger guys ready to play, right? And we did replace some players that, you know, obviously Jonah Monheim, one of the best tackle guards players in the country, now moves to center. So we don't have that help anymore outside. I thought Emmanuel Pregnon played very well. I think Alani Noah still has a ways to go to get to that next level, but he's doing better. And we see flashes of how physical and dominant he can be. But tackle for me right now is the biggest question mark. And how do you get that fixed? I think the biggest part is you really put an emphasis on ones versus ones, right? You don't really treat it like fall camp. We're not going to go iron sharpens iron like you do it at you know, on a bye week or like you do in fall camp or spring ball, but you do have one-on-one pass protection periods or 9-on-7 periods where it's best on best because you want to keep that competition going. So in my opinion, we have to overemphasize that this week. Put Alani No or put Mason Murphy at left tackle, put Tobias Raymond at right tackle, and let them go against Anthony Lucas over and over again, or at least for a period. Get about 10 reps with Anthony Lucas. Get about 10 reps with Jameel Muhammad. That's what's going to make you better because you're going to face players like that. And I think Anthony Lucas is one of the best pass rushers in the conference. Let those guys get some reps against those players this week in practice to build that confidence. I mean, it's tough too if you're losing every rep and you're not building that confidence, but that's when you bring the next guy in, right? Or that's where you tell them, hey, this is what you need to do better to win those reps, right? And then when they start winning one, and then they win 3, and then Tobias wins a couple against Anthony Lucas or wins a couple against Jameel Muhammad, he starts getting that confidence like, okay, if I can do it here at practice, that's going to translate to the game, right? And I can do it against a Josiah Stewart. I can do it against some of these better pass rushers in the conference. So it's tough to do in season, especially when you
Yeah.
make a change. But those are my 2 things: just consistency with this group and also getting a little iron sharpens iron in practice, get some one-on-one pass rush, and let them go against our best defensive pass rushers.
We got a question from Witch Bar who wanted to know your thoughts on Miller maybe trying to run a little bit more, especially if there are O-line issues there.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously he's not a running quarterback. I will say, I got to give him credit though. I think last year or 2 years ago, maybe he had a big time touchdown run, right? When he was a backup, I think he came in relief for Caleb and broke up a big, I want to say 30 or 40-yard run for a touchdown. So we know he can do it. I might be giving a little more credit there, but I'm going to stick with it. Don't fact check me on that. He had a 30-yard touchdown run, and we're staying with it. But I know that he can move around a little bit. He's an athletic quarterback, right? Is dual threat or is the zone read his MO? No, I mean that's not what he specializes in. He's a great pocket passer, but I think one way that we can help is to move the pocket, right? When you struggle with getting protection, especially at tackle position, when you struggle of keeping a firm pocket, it's important to be able to move that pocket. Allow Miller to work side to sideline, get some design on the run type throws to roll out, to get outside, to get some play actions instead of staying, in that tackle box. Let them get outside, break, contain. And the best way to do that, especially when you have a tackle that's struggling, first of all, when left tackle is struggling in the game, run to the right? Move the pocket to the right, get some rollouts to his strong throwing side, right, where he's going to be comfortable, but use what he marks to cut down that defensive end. Help them chip and get some contain on that defensive edge rusher that's given us some trouble, and let Miller run and move in the pocket. Now, are we going to do that every single play and throw on the run every time? No, but that at least gets them on their heels a little bit as a defensive lineman, and they can't pin their ears back and run. And that was another issue with Lincoln wanting to run the football, right? And we talked about being conservative, but a good way to slow down a pass rush is to have a strong run game, right? And I think we saw it in the second half, like Joe Osorio talked about a couple minutes ago of the line allowing the run game to get going a little bit. That will slow down the pass rush instead of pinning their ears back and going. But overall, do I think Miller's going to be a big factor in the run game with some zone reads and all that? No. But I would like to see us maybe move the pocket a little bit more this week if it's another issue of protecting him.
Now, I thought a bright spot in the offense was the effort we saw from Woody Marks. I feel like every game,
Yeah, what a play.
It's just so impressive.
What a player too. Yeah, not just that play.
No,
yeah.
and we knew this coming in. He was a veteran, not only running but catching the ball, and we just see each week the effort that he makes. But what was like? How do we describe what happened on that play? My intern was with me, and after it happened, she was like, "I feel like I was just in a fever dream." Like it was such a back and forth crazy moment. And I know I'm overblowing it right now, but take it away, Cody. I was just really impressed by that second effort by Woody Marks.
You're not overblowing, because how many times have you ever seen a play like that? Like when things like that's what's funny about like football is like you're so used to scripted plays, run play, pass play, just very normal things happening. And then when something like that happens, you forget like how crazy this sport actually is that we know and love, that things like that can happen. Right. And it's just crazy.
Well, fact that,
yeah, I mean,
we thought that had happened against LSU as well. That like change of possession, change of possession.
That's a great point.
The fact that that's happened almost basically twice in one season, let alone in 3 games, is absurd.
Yeah, I'm still salty about. I mean, they got a personal foul penalty, so the personal foul against LSU helped a little bit with field position and changed all of that. But I still think we should have got a fresh set of downs. But anyways, this one we did, and that it was crazy. I mean, for those of you who didn't see the game, I'm sure everyone who's watching this podcast did. But Miller went to throw a pass. It was a sack fumble. Technically, the ball gets knocked out of his hands. It was one of those: is his arm coming forward? Is it not? Right? And it just started to. It could have gone either way, but that's when you stick with the call on the field. So he fumbles it. Ball goes up in the air. Kenneth Grant picks it up. Their defensive tackle starts running. And Woody Marks, like it almost felt like watching it in real time. I knew he was going to do that. Not saying that I'm like, oh, no, football. I knew he was going to do. But you can tell because he could have just chopped his legs down, right? He could have went down, tackled him low, protected himself, and gotten the big guy down. But he kind of like wrapped around him and only went for the football. He didn't even want to tackle him. He just said, I'm going to go. And it was a heads up play. And I put a tweet out, and obviously, we ended up not winning that football game. But I said, if we do win this football game, or we go to overtime, or it comes back, or it comes down to a possession and the Trojans win, remember this play for a very long time. And it's unfortunate that the game didn't go that way, because that would have been one of those, I'm not going to put it up there with the Bush push or Andre Hidari's kick when I played against Stanford, that big time moment, or some of those comebacks, USC Notre Dame back in the day. I'm not going to put it up there, but that would have been a moment that I think would have gone down in USC history if we would have pulled that win off. So that's just how, and I say all that to say how big a moment that was and how great effort that was from Woody Marks. It was so impressive to see. That's a team firster, in my opinion. That's a guy that's willing to do
Yeah.
whatever it takes to win a football game and put his
Banged
body on the
up
line to
too.
go out there and take the football. Yeah, he was
Yep.
hurting.
Same
He had,
page.
another 100-yard game, which was awesome to see from him. I think he's starting to really get that consistency. He's had 400-yard games in his entire career, and 2 of them are now at USC. So
Wow.
obviously he's
Good
really
stat.
playing well in this scheme. So it's awesome to see. But you can't teach that, right? You can't coach that. That's a high effort play. He could have either been frustrated and turned around and not made a play on the football, or he could have just tried to chop his legs down and protect his body and not get hurt and take on the big guy head on. But he goes out there, pulls the football away. USC gets a fresh set of downs. 2 plays later, we find Jay Fair for a touchdown. So that's
Yep.
unbelievable effort and play by Woody Marks. In my opinion, Miller's played well. We've seen some receivers play well. I think Woody Marks is the MVP on this offense so far, and he's going to be a key part of this team going forward.
Agreed. Now, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but just one of the most unfortunate things to come out of Saturday's game was seeing Laken McCree go down. He's a guy who we've talked about on this podcast. We were so excited to see come back healthy, and not only that, but get so involved in the passing game and become a true threat in that regard. What do you see for you? I'm assuming that if at the very least he'll be out for next week. What do you foresee USC doing? Because the next options they have at tight end are not as experienced as Lake. He kind of really became that veteran presence at that position. How do you see them incorporating the tight end position with younger guys, or I should say less experienced guys?
Yeah, that's a big hit for this USC offense, and he was our leading receiver going into this game, right? And both receptions and yards, and he was starting to become a threat down the field, right? And when you have a pass catching tight end that is a problem, it is so frustrating for a defensive coordinator to have to prepare for all these playmakers we have on the outside, and then also you have a big 6'6", 6'5" tight end, 250-pound that can go out there and block and also can make plays in the pass game, right? It's frustrating. It's a Travis Kelsey type. It's a Mark Andrews. It's a Mike Gesicki. It's Sam Laporta from Detroit, right? It's those type of players that are so difficult to game plan for. And we had a great one in Laken McCree. And again, like I said, we don't know the full extent. Hopefully, it is not season ending, and hopefully he can be back out there this year, especially after having the knee injury that he had a year ago. Now it's not the same knee, so that's positive from what it looked like on the broadcast. But it's for me, and you get a little emotional because the injury looks bad. What it means to the team is terrible. When you think about production from that position, and I'll get to that in a second. Those are all tough. But the worst part for me, and I'm sure anybody watching, is when they go to those players on the TV copies and he's
I
on the
saw it on
sideline
Twitter and it was
and
so
and
heartbreaking.
you just see the emotion come through, right? All the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into this sport and those day in and day outs with your brothers and going through fall camp, going through spring ball, especially rehabbing an injury and getting back and all the effort that it takes to see him have that moment on the sideline it's tough to watch, right? And you hate to see it, but I love that he had teammates around him. Guys were pumping him up. Guys were kind of rallying around him and trying to keep him up. But you are, and you see those tears coming out. Those aren't sad tears. That is just hours and hours and hours of work and dedication and preparation, all that emotion being let go at once. So I hate to see that, but going forward, the season goes on, and that's a huge loss. But you're going to have some guys step up, like you just asked a second ago. What does that look like? And for me, Cade Eldridge is obviously the first guy that comes to mind. He's played a good amount of football this year, and he's been that second tight end, now moved up to tight end one with Lake out. If he is out, again, we don't know the full extent of
Yeah,
this injury, but
speculating. Yeah.
Cade played against LSU. Cade played a good amount against Utah State, right? He's going to be that next man up mentality. Outside of that, though, is where it gets interesting, right? And in my opinion, I think Walker Lyons is going to be a guy that we're going to see more of, and he was in there for some big time plays in that football game. We'll talk about that in a second before we wrap up this offensive segment. But Joey Olsen is a guy that flashed in spring. Haven't seen a lot of him this year, and it was interesting to see Walker out there. Maybe not as much Joey. I thought he looked great in the spring, and I think those are two guys that are younger players that can come out and make some plays. That are going to have to make some plays going forward. And then I know Carson Tabarachi's been out with an injury. So that's another knock in that position group. A guy that again transitioned from defensive player to playing tight end. Had some reps last year. Had a big catch in the Holiday Bowl. But yeah, it's going to be tough. Now, I hope we don't get there. But when I played here at SC and we had a lot of tight end injuries, there's always that option of, and we're not there yet. Obviously 2 guys out though is a big knock, but we had times where we had tackles have to play a tight end type position, and we would have 6 offensive linemen personnel groupings, right? And you'd bring in an offensive tackle as a tight end for run blocking, for pass blocking, to add an extra
Yeah.
element in the pass protection or in the run game. So will that be an option? I don't think we're there yet. I don't think it's quite an emergency yet, but it's going to be very, very difficult to replace a guy like Laken McCree.
And since we're on the topic of injuries, I know we got questions about Mekhi Lemon's status. We unfortunately don't know anything there. The only question that was asked to Lincoln about that was directly after the game, and he said he came straight from the locker room, so he had no updates about Mekhi Lemon, unfortunately. But like Cody said, our thoughts and prayers are with him, obviously, to get better. And as soon as we hear something from Lincoln Riley, we'll let you know. That probably will come, honestly, on Trojans Live on Monday. So that will be the latest info from Lincoln Riley there.
Yeah.
We got a question from Joe Osorio, who said, I loved it because he said, thought of another question, lol. He tweeted 2 hours later. So I just love that his mind was percolating with more questions for the podcast.
I'm sure a lot of people had a lot of questions after this game. I could tell, but yeah.
Understandable. He said, why don't you think Lincoln Riley gets the ball into Branch's hand more often as a receiver? Why not take more shots downfield with him?
Joe, I think for me, I mean, he had 6 catches for 98 yards. He did have a couple drops too that were on him, and he'll be the first to say that. I've got to make some of those plays, especially on that last drive. I think if he catches that pass there, we have a chance to clock it and maybe take a couple shots to get into field goal range. So, and obviously a lot of other things went wrong. So I'm not just putting on Zachariah, but, it felt like he did have a couple drops there that helped him out. But he's still 6 catches for 98 yards. That's a great day as a wide receiver. Now, to pushing the ball downfield more to Zachariah, I think that plays hand in hand with the offensive line protection wise. I would love, and I've advocated for that. I love the end arounds. I love the screens. I love the quick plays, getting the ball in space. I'm a big fan of that. But the most exciting he is and the best element to his game is his speed, right? His top end speed is second to none to any other wide receiver in the country, right? And we saw how effective he can be down the field, right? That was a beautifully thrown ball to Miller, or from Miller Moss, moving the pocket, throwing on the run to Zachariah on that corner play. A couple plays later, he did miss him, which I think, Joe, would have been a big time play if he catches that. There was nothing but green grass in front of him, the one that Miller just slightly overthrew a couple plays later. But I'm with you. I think we need to find a way to get Zachariah one-on-one matchups outside, get him the ball downfield, or even if it's in slot, put him at slot. We get a man-to-man look. Let him run those slot fades, right? Look off the safety and then run a hitch on the outside, and you have all that green grass and to work with, a ton of space to the sideline, and let him get those one-on-one matchups down the field. And those are quick throws. You can still get it out quick and still push the ball down the field. It doesn't always have to be a 5-step drop and a go ball that's 50 yards down the field. So I would love to see that, but I think the biggest factor of that, or being able to push the ball down the field to anyone, to not just Mekhi, but some other receivers, is we're going to have a little bit more confidence and be better in pass protection.
Okay, final thing from me as far as USC's offense. We got many questions about USC's 4-minute drill towards the end of the game. Many questions about the play calling on that front. We did hear from Coach Riley in the post-game press conference, and he said he was critical of himself immediately. And usually he says, you got to wait till see the tape or whatever. But I think he knew immediately that he wasn't happy with the way he called that section of the game. What was your analysis of how that went down, Cody?
Yeah, I'm gonna break this down because I really feel like, and I watched it over and over and over and over again. I kept rewinding it. I watched the play calls. I watched what was trying to happen, especially on the second play, right? Because there was confusion there. It didn't look like everyone was on the same page, and then Miller had to burn it and throw it down, or to have a throwaway right there at Woody Marks' feet. So I went back and I watched this series again over and over, because I'll first start it by saying this: as an offense, and especially as a play caller on offense or a quarterback, there's nothing better than knowing that you can have the football, especially when you come back, right? When we're down 14-0, you come back and you can end the football game with the ball in your hands, right? We didn't have to let Michigan touch the ball again. We had everything we needed right there. That was our best starting field position of the entire game, right? We started at the 38-yard line, our own 38, besides the fumble where that technically counts as a starting of the series. But outside of that, that was our best starting field position the entire game. And we had a chance. We got the ball with 5 minutes and 1 second to put the game away. Now, we start off with a run. I'm okay with that. I don't mind that at all, right? I love the play call of starting with a run. Let's take some time off the clock, right? Our defense is playing great right now. Let's take a little bit of time off the clock. Michigan's struggling to throw the football, so we start with the run. We get 2 yards. I'm fine with that. It's not 4. You count 4 yards as a win on offense, so I'm fine with that. 2-yard run, that's still a win. We're moving forward. We're going to take some time off the clock. Now we've got 2nd and 8. Your playbook on 2nd and 8 is huge. You can call whatever you want, right? You have a lot of plays to call on 2nd and 8, right? And especially, you only need maybe 3 or 4 yards to make it 3rd and short, 3rd and manageable, right? So the next play is where it gets interesting. And at first, I was very confused by that second play. Right on the broadcast, Brad Nessler said that they tried to run a screen. It wasn't a screen. I don't. It was not a screen. So what happened on that play is that we had 2 tight ends on the left. Right, we had Kate Eldridge in there, and then we had Walker Lyons, who's a freshman, on the edge of the line of scrimmage. We had Kate Eldridge come across on the run play. Right, it looked like it was a run. It looked like it was going to be a handoff to Woody Marks to the right, and then we had Emmanuel Pregnon pulling to the right as well. Right from left guard, I thought it was supposed to be a run play, right? I thought it was an RPO. That's what I thought maybe it was. It was an RPO because you have every single offensive lineman is pass or run blocking. You have every wide receiver on the TV copy is run blocking. The only person that goes out for a route is Walker Lyons, right? So he engages with Josiah Stewart, number 0, and then it looks like he's trying to shed him and slip to the flat, right? And Miller sells the run, really sells the run, and then he looks quick to the left to throw it to Walker Lyons into the flat, and then he realizes that he's not open and he has to burn it on their at Woody Marks' feet. So I was okay. So watching that back, I'm thinking, was this supposed to be an RPO where it was either a run or a throw to Walker Lyons, or was this a designed kind of a got you type play to where they're expecting run. We think we're going to hand the ball off, and Walker Lyons is going to slip to the flat. Right? I think that was what it was supposed to be. I don't think it was an RPO because if it's an RPO, then you start looking at Miller a little bit like, hey, just hand the ball off. They covered it well, hand it off and call it a day. The reason that I think it wasn't an RPO and that it was a designed little slide route or a flat route to the left to Walker Lyons is because after the play on the TV copy, Miller looks over, I'm assuming to Lincoln, and shakes his head. And then you see him look back over to Walker Lyons and he does this motion. He goes, get out in the flat. What are you doing? I think what he was trying to say was, and this again, all speculation, but this is just from playing in a ton of systems and watching it over and over and over again and understanding what I think happened is that Walker was supposed to be in the flat right away instead of engaging because he engaged with Josiah Stewart. And then as he tried to shed and get into the flat so Miller could throw it to him, Josiah Stewart held him a little bit. I know there were some missed calls. That one's tough to call because he's already engaged in blocking. So it doesn't look as clean. It doesn't look as smooth. So that's tough to call. But I think that's what really happened right now. My thoughts on that. That's kind of prefacing what I think the play call was, because for a lot of people, was that supposed to be a screen? Was it supposed to be a handoff? Was it an RPO? That's from watching it back. I think it was supposed to be a designed, look like a run, play action, and then throw a little pop screen or a pop flat to Walker Lyons with space in front, right? But it wasn't there, so we had to burn it. I would rather it been an RPO, so Miller could have just handed off and realized that okay, Walker's not open. Let's just live with the run play and then go back to 3rd down. But my biggest concern with that, and where I think Lincoln is frustrated a little bit, is at that point in the game, again, speculation, just off of what I've seen. I've played a ton of football. I've watched a ton of football. Why are we trying to get the ball to Walker Lyons? Now, I know there's a expect the unexpected type situation to it, to where no one in the stadium thought that the freshman tight end who just came in is going to get the ball. Was that kind of the element to it of why are we trying to get it to, why are we trying to get to Walker Lyons? I was confused on that. Instead of trying to get it to Deuce Robinson, instead of trying to get it to Woody Marks, even on a screen or a quick little play or a swing route out of the backfield, or maybe getting it to even Kate Eldridge on that play, who's a more experienced tight end, or pushing it outside to Jacoby Lane. And then the second part of that is if you're going to throw it in that situation, which I'm fine with, I love throwing the football, 2nd and 8, your playbook's wide open. Just go to quick game, right? Just do a play to where everyone's involved, and it's not just a one person kind of trick play or a fake play action, hit him in the flat. Because the reason I think that was the case is that receivers on the outside were blocking as well, right? No one was looking for the football. We even had, I think, Alani Noah working up to the 2nd level, so he was already almost downfield. So they thought it was a run play. The reason I don't think it was an RPO is because it was obvious of Walker Lyons slipping out, and Miller didn't even really try to look like he was going to hand it off. It was, hey, I'm riding this fake and I'm throwing this no matter what. But my second part of that, like I said, is just go to quick game. Go to a quick game. Go to a slant flat on both sides. Go to quick hitches on the outside. I know again, Miller threw a pick six earlier on a hitch play to Will Johnson, but he wasn't in the football game, so you can attack either side. You're right; it doesn't cut the field in half. Go to a slant arrow. Go to a sit over the ball with the curl outside. Anything else In my opinion, I think again that's where Lincoln's coming from. Than trying to get a got you play right there and kick a little flat route out to a tight end who doesn't have a catch in his career, right? Or doesn't have a lot of experience at playing this game, right? So that was a frustrating part for me. That's kind of, and I know I'm talking about that a lot, but I want to give full in depth because I think that was the most important series of the entire football game for our offense was being a chance to put the football game away on that series and win the game. And Michigan never had to touch the ball again. And then we go to third down, right? So the next play. So now you have 3rd and 8, right? Which is tough because 3rd and 8, as opposed to maybe hitting a slant and having 3rd and 2, is a lot more difficult. The defense can do a lot more. Wink Martindale can do a lot more. Our playbook doesn't, it's a little bit more condensed on what you have to do. It's an obvious passing situation, right? You expect screen now, is what they were probably thinking. But then we get a false start, right? And 3rd and 8's still manageable, but we get a false start. Tobias Raymond jumps off sides. Freshman, hate to see it. Run a lap on practice on Tuesday, right? Do some push-ups. It's an MA, it's a mental assignment mistake, or it's a missed assignment. Frustrating, but that's a tough situation to be in as a freshman, right? He's going to learn from that. But now you're in 3rd and 13, and your playbook goes to this, right? It gets so much smaller on what you can do on 3rd and 13, especially in Lincoln's head, knowing our defense is playing great. Michigan hasn't had a first down this entire second half. They have 9 total yards of offense in the second half. The screenplay, I don't hate it because of that situation, right? If we stop them and the game and we win the game, we're thinking, okay, fine. I'm glad we protected the football and didn't make a bad play worse. But my biggest issue, and if he hit that screen to Woody Marks, I know the shovel pass people on Twitter and stuff were hating that, but if he hit it and it actually timed up better, there were some guys in front. Michigan only rushed 4 and they played cover 3. They dropped out. They had a zone coverage on and guys were playing deep. So we could have had a space. Would he have got it? I don't know. Would have made it a 4th and 1 or 2, and then we go for it on 4th down to try to finish the football game there or keep the drive alive. I don't know, but my biggest thing with that drive, and I think it's important to talk about, was I know people are frustrated with the play calling, but in my opinion, the 2 killers for that drive was a 2nd down call, right? Just hand it off or run quick game. I'm just not a big fan of trying to find Walker Lines, an inexperienced player. If that's what it was, right? You can watch it back for yourself and tell me what you think. But if that's what it was, let's just go to quick game. And then also, it's tough. I know, there's really nothing you can do about it, but that false start. Those 2 back-to-back situations. I'm fine with the run on first down. Love that. Take some time off the clock. Don't hate the screen on 3rd and 13 because it's 3rd and 13. It's not 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 4 to where it's, realistic to pick it up. It's 3rd and 13. They're going to play coverage. Fine with the screen. You kind of have to just, take what, or what it is. It is what it is. Just don't make a bad play worse and live with it and don't compound the problem. But I think on 2nd down, that play call right there is what Lincoln is talking about of being frustrated with himself. And again, I know I talked a lot there, but I watched it probably 20 times going back over and over and over and over again because of how important and how crucial that part of the game was. But I think if Lincoln, watching it back and what he said in the press conference, he'd love to have that series back. And again, I still think Lincoln Riley is one of, if not the best play callers in all of college football. It's tough and we talked about, him being a little conservative this game. And obviously he's going to be first to say, I've got to be better. And I'm going off of his comments. And I think that was an important drive. But there were other factors involved that kind of forced him to maybe not call the plays he wanted to. And we talked about that with struggling protection and all these other factors. So I'm not questioning that. I just watching it back, analyzing it. And again, I promise I watched it probably 20 times. That one play, that 2nd down call, because I think first down was fine. 3rd and 18 or 3rd and 13, you kind of had to call a screen to protect the football. But that 2nd down play call, I think, is going to be one of those moments that you look back, if I'm Lincoln Riley or you're up at night laying there saying, man, I wish I just would have maybe went a different play or a different way with that play. And he admitted that. And I'm not saying that's exactly what he was talking about, but, as a former quarterback and watching that, I think that's the play he's talking about because he can't do anything about the false start. And then the screen on 3rd and 13 does it look great, right? Are we frustrated? Like, hey, let's try to pick up first down. But if they throw a pick there, then we say, why are you forcing a football? Just, our defense is playing great. Let's just protect it or run it, take some time off, and then move on. Now, I wouldn't have mind a draw play either on 3rd and 13, so it's not an incompletion, but, that's also speculating. But again, I just wanted to preface, I'm full confidence in Lincoln Riley. I do believe he is the best play caller in college football. I think there's a lot of great ones, but, it's just one of those games where we couldn't get into a rhythm, and there's a lot of outside factors on that and being backed up and offensive line struggles and couldn't get the run game going, trying to go inside instead of maybe going outside. So there are a lot of issues, but again, it's frustrating when you watch it back. But this is again my empty the notebook. I'm moving on from it. It's they're going to get it fixed going or this week going forward, and I have full confidence in Lincoln Riley and Miller Moss and the rest of the guys on this offense.
Sorry, I have a couple more now that it spurred more things. First of
No,
all,
good. I just had to say that.
when you for all the factors that you just listed, and you're in an away crowd of the biggest group of people I've ever been in, how much does starting to press and feeling the frustration of we're not getting into a rhythm on offense kind of factor in as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we saw that a little bit from Miller and Lincoln both in this football game. But I mean, it's and the play I think back to immediately from Miller are two plays. Obviously the first one for me is after that amazing play Miller had where there was a free rusher. He kind of juked him, went in and out, and then he found Zachariah Branch on the crossing route and had a huge 50-yard gain, right? That was kind of that first spark we had. It was 14-0, a very important play. That was beautiful. But then 2 plays later, it looked like we ran a tight end flat or a little, slide route back to back, right, to Laken McCree. And the first one I think was designed. The second one though was an RPO, right? And I think Miller was trying to do too much to make a play happen. He got confused maybe with coverage. He should have just handed it off. We had numbers on the left. It was an RPO. Either give it to Woody Marks going left, or I throw the slide route coming across the field this way to. Oh wait, it's opposite. I'm going left to right. By the way, I
Camera
have two
issues.
cameras up right now. Yeah, but I think he tried to force that right, and then it was a wasted play. And you can't have wasted plays down in the red zone. So I think that was him pressing a little bit, being able to throw it away on some situations instead of taking a hit. I think he pressed a little bit, and then I think trying to get the football to Zachariah on that pick six, right? And that's, I hate, we're talking about it though. We said the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we've got to talk about it all. I think that was a huge factor in this football game, and I still think Miller did a great job and made the plays when they were there. Had 3 touchdown passes. It took some big time hits and stayed in there tough. But that pick for me was him, I think, pressing a little bit, trying to force the ball to Zachariah and not, fully reading the coverage. And Will Johnson is the best corner in college football, right? I'm still confused. I watched it back. I couldn't tell if it was cover 2, cover 4, cover 6, right? And cover 2 is cloud coverage on both sides. Cover 4 is quarters coverage on both sides, right? Each corner, and then safety both have a quarter of the field. And then cover 6 is where it's cover 4 on one side and cover 2 on one side, right? So Will Johnson did a phenomenal job of disguising that coverage. I still think it was, I mean, I don't know. It's tough. I went back and forth. I said, is he playing cloud there and he's, responsibility is a flat, or is it cover 4 and he baited Miller into throwing that and just sat on it, right? I don't really know. And that's tough to see when you have a guy like Will Johnson who's that good of a player. And I've talked about how good he was, and you got to throw away from him. You got to worry about him because he can do stuff like that and he can disguise coverages. And, Wink Martindale is one of the best in the country at doing that. So I think that was Miller forcing a little bit. And I would have been, kind of sticking on that real quick. And I know it's a negative thing, but I think it's important to talk about. And Miller will get it fixed. But I would have been okay with an interception. I would have been okay with a couple interceptions, right? I'm fine with that when our defense is playing well, trying to be aggressive, and you throw a pick, right? That's fine. But I think an absolute killer was the pick six, because if they get a pick, their offense still has to come back on the field, who can't move the football, and they still got to try to go score. When it's a pick six, you take all that pressure off their offense, and Will Johnson has a walk-in touchdown. So that was an absolute killer in that football game. Again, I think Miller played his tail off. He took so many hits and didn't back down. He stood in there tough.
Yeah.
He put his body on the line for his team, but that was a crucial moment in this football game. And again, with Lincoln, I think both of them just couldn't get into a full rhythm like they wanted to. We saw glimpses of it, and I would have loved to continue to throw the football. I talked about in the second half, that first drive of the second half. We threw the ball 10 times on a 12-play drive, and Miller completed 8 of them. We finished in a touchdown. We just had to be able to protect a little bit better. So I think there were a lot of factors. But again, my biggest point on this of not getting again in that scenario where we feel like we have to force it or throw the football over the field or have to do a bunch of things and can't get into a rhythm. We have to get the 5 offensive linemen up front fixed, and we have to get it fixed quickly.
Now, I want to move us over to the defense because I feel like I've asked too many questions for the offense, and we have more questions to go to in our general question section. So let's move to the defense. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. Now, over on the defense, Cody, what did you think overall when you put both halves together of this defensive performance?
Well, I'm gonna stop you there
Okay,
because
stop me.
I didn't want to do it at the beginning. I think I know you know where I'm going now. I didn't want to do it at the beginning and start
I
off
do.
on
Here
a
you go.
negative.
Yeah.
We went back and forth when we previewed about talking about it. I hate blaming it. Keely hates blaming it. It's something that you don't want to talk about. But I know a lot of SC fans would be frustrated if we didn't acknowledge it, right? And they want to hear our opinions on it. And I'm sure we got some questions on it, but I'm going to acknowledge it now. The officiating in this football game, right? And for me, again, I hate blaming officiating. I still think that no matter how bad a call can be, there are still other factors that can happen in a football game, right? And you can say that was a game-winning call, or that blew the football game because you missed a call, or that was, that forced this team to lose because you missed a call. That can be true to an extent, but even if they miss a call, you still have to go score, or you still have to go kick a field goal you maybe be in field goal position for. And it's football. Mistakes can happen. I've seen extra points get blocked. I've seen muff punts. We've seen the craziest things happen in this sport. But I feel like it's important to acknowledge, because there were plays in this game that maybe didn't determine the outcome, but absolutely altered the momentum or the outcome of this football game. Didn't determine it, but it altered it, right? And I think it affected it. And I think that's important. And, some of the ones that I think were frustrating were the missed face mask calls, right? There were two. Someone said three. I didn't see the third one, but I saw two for sure on Miller, of him getting grabbed by the face mask, that were missed. One of those that I think that was very important, and why it, again, altered, but it didn't determine the outcome of this game, was the one before half, right? It seemed like the half was over. We're not getting a chance to score. Got a face mask around the 50. If they call that 15-yarder on the face mask and they call it right, like they should have, this isn't me saying, oh, they missed it both ways, or there's so many different things. This is a blatant, the CBS crew showed the review, was a missed face mask penalty. If they call that right, we now attempt a field goal. I'm not saying we're going to make it, but we have a chance to attempt a field goal and score 3 points. We lost this football game by 3 points, right? So if we get that chance, that's why I say altered, right? If we get a face mask penalty there and we have a chance to kick a field goal, does he make it? Who knows, right? We have no idea. But if he does, now we have 3 more points on the board, and now it's a tie football game at the end instead of them going down to win, right? So that's another factor. That's why I say it alters the outcome. Another one for me that I don't know why we didn't look at. And I know Lincoln, I think, was asked questions about why they didn't look at it, and they told him that they did. And I don't know if this was the exact scenario, but the delay of game that happened twice. But one of them was a huge part in this football game, right? It was a delay of game that they picked up a first down, and then the next play, it was 4th and 1, delay of game, should have been 4th and 6. I don't think they go for it. Then I think they punt it. We're not talking about this. But then the very next play after that missed delay of game, they have the huge touchdown run from Mullings, right? That's why I say it doesn't determine the outcome. We still have chances to win this game, but it absolutely alters the football game. That was so frustrating for me. Michigan only had 3 penalties the entire game, right? And I'll say this, something that was very frustrating. They had 46 rush attempts in this football game. They ran the ball 46 times. You're going to tell me, which is, they almost ran the ball 50 times. They ran the football almost 50 times. You're going to tell me not one call on a pulling guard, on a or combo block up to the next linebacker, on a reach block on the outside. There wasn't one holding call on 46 rush attempts the entire football game. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I don't want someone who's a non-SC fan or someone to listen and go, Kessler's blaming the refs, but I think it's important. And I say that because I know there was. We saw the clips. We saw videos. We saw screenshots. We saw plays of a blatant tug of the jersey, a hold. On the last play of the game, it looked like Anthony Lucas gets bear hugged, right? And I know it's tough to call a hold on a guy that has a hand cast, but if you watch that back, watch Anthony Lucas, right? So I'm not just saying this with no concrete evidence to back it up, right? And there are plenty of non-biased articles out there and people that were impartial talking about this. So I don't want to give it too much time, and there's a lot more penalties that weren't called, like I said, a couple delayed games, a couple missed holding calls, a couple missed face mask calls that I think, again, didn't determine the game. I think we had a chance to win it. We could have played better. I am putting the blame on USC, right? I'm not using this as an excuse, but I think it's very important, or it would be irresponsible of me not to bring up that there were absolutely missed calls, and there were some missed calls on both sides. I'm not saying that or that it was just one way, right? But it felt like it was a lot more one-sided, and maybe I'm biased, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I truly felt like there were multiple missed calls that absolutely affected the outcome of this football game.
Yeah, I mean, it's always frustrating when the refs become a story in a game in any capacity, because it's like I want the players who play to have their their hard work rewarded, and sometimes like it just doesn't feel like it is. And it was interesting though from my perspective on the field. I couldn't obviously see what was going on, and I had no cell service for most of the game. So I got online after the game, and it was just screenshot after screenshot of USC fans upset about
Oh,
the officiating.
speaking of that, no, that just reminded me. Two more that I missed, and I think these are far more important than the other penalties that I just talked about. Is when if you miss a play, if you miss a penalty, okay, fine. If you miss, a face mask, which I think is a health concern at times, you can affect the head or neck area. I think, obviously missing a hold isn't going to really hurt anybody. There can be issues with that, but you just talked about screenshots and videos, and we talked about it earlier. And this one frustrates me a little bit, right? And I'm a Trojan through and through, so I feel, obviously I'm not on this team, but past players, fans, Trojan family, we're all one. When you miss a call that leads to an injury or a serious injury, that's when I get a little frustrated, right? And I'm talking about two different times. The Makai Lemon hit was the definition of a blind side block, right? And that one was so tough to watch. And my blood gets boiling a little bit talking about it. But when you miss a call as obvious of a blindside block like that, and it is because you have two refs that should be watching the gunners, and the gunners are the guys on the outside that run down the field. Someone should have had an eye on Makai. Those are two. Both those guys have eyes on them the entire time. When you have gunners on the outside, the fact that that was missed, and I don't, that I'm trying to censor myself here. That one really, for not cussing or for the sake of the family friendly show, but that one frustrated me very much, and I felt for Makai. And now he leaves the field reportedly in an ambulance, and that was frustrating, right? That's inexcusable. When it becomes a safety concern and you miss the call, there's no excuse for that. The other one, the horse collar on Jacoby Lane. Luckily, his foot didn't get stuck in the turf, and he came up a little slow and was limping, but it was a clear as day horse collar that will. I've seen those tear an ACL. I've seen those rip a hamstring. I've seen those rip a quad. I mean, so many bad things happen on those horse collars where you bend a knee backwards or something happens. And luckily, he got up and was fine. But when you miss a call that can lead to a serious injury, that's where I'm not even blaming the refs anymore. That's just where I get frustrated, and it makes me a little ticked off. I'm mad about that. So those ones frustrated me, but yeah, like you said, they were just and again, this isn't. I'm not saying this with hey, oh man, the refs. We lost the game because the refs, right? No, I'll take full responsibility, or USC will take full responsibility. We should have won that football game. There's other things we could have done. Michigan did a very good job of sticking to their game plan, right? You got to give credit where credit is due. They did a great job, and they went out there and executed and played well, and ran the football at will and did a good job. And I think we did a great job stopping as well and making in-game adjustments. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I say all that to say there were absolutely calls in this football game that altered the outcome.
Well, you mentioned in-game adjustments, and I basically alluded to that when talking about the defense. And I'll just go with Jeff's question. He said, "What changed in our run defense in the second half?"
That was a good transition, Keely. I think you could tell I was getting a little fired up, just reeling back
I
in a
tried
little
my
bit.
best. I tried my
Yeah,
best.
I think early on, we, and I wrote my notes as I was watching. So when I watched the game, I typed notes the entire time. So I watch it, take notes. I rewatch it, take notes. I don't ever get to sit down and be a fan unless the home games and I have family there. I'll stay and watch for halftime. So and I'm excited. My brother's coming down with his girlfriend on Saturday, so I'll get to watch the Wisconsin game in the Coliseum with them. So that'll be fun. But yeah, when I watch them at home, I have my wife record it. I finish up at ESPN LA. I come straight here and I take notes. Every time I watched it over and over and over again, my notes in the first half where we weren't loading the box enough. I really felt like there were times that we were playing a little bit more zone. We had some 5-man boxes, some 6-man boxes instead of a 7 or 8-man box, right? Even when they went spread, even when they're in 11 personnel. What I mean by 11 personnel is one running back, one tight end, 3 receivers, or a 3 wide look. We still should have loaded the box, in my opinion. Again, Dan Lynn is an amazing defensive coordinator. I'm just going off of my pregame notes and my keys of the game. There were too many times that it was a 5 or 6-man box. We have a very good defensive line. I don't think we have the guys there yet that we can only have a 4 or 5-man box that aren't going to get moved around, especially with a good offensive line against Michigan, right? They're physical. They were double team blocking. We were getting moved off our spot a little bit. I thought Gavin Meyer played well. I thought Nate Clifton played well. Easton Mascarenas Arnold played well. Eric Gentry was my MVP on defense, flying around, playing great football. But I say all that to say the second half adjustment that I think we did make is we said we don't care anymore. And kind of what I talked about on the Victory podcast, we just played man-to-man everywhere and loaded the box. Let's just load the box, put 7 or 8 guys in the box, play our safeties at 6, 7 yards, force them to throw it over the top or force them to beat us with their arm, which they could not do. And we just loaded the box in the second half. I wish we would have done that more in the first half. But the other side of that too, and I'll say real quick before we move on, is I do understand the concern with loading the box because when you load the box or you play everyone tight to the line of scrimmage, you don't have that second or third level of defense. If they break through the line of scrimmage or one guy misses his gap, off to the races, right? That can happen. So that's the scary part about it. So you've got to find a happy medium. But I think the biggest change that we made was we quit playing zone in the second half, where we didn't play as much zone. We played a lot more man to man, and we just put guys on the island outside and loaded the box, and they couldn't run the football in the second half until that last big play.
What did you see from those two explosive plays in the first half? It seemed like, from my inexperienced eyes, that they were missed assignments.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I don't want to blame. I'm not going to say any names because again, I'm never going to blame someone that I
No,
feel
sorry, I'm
like
not asking you to.
was in the wrong spot. No, no, I know you're not. I'm just. But when you watch it, I mean, I watch it as a former player, and I can read a defense. I know a defense who I think should have been there. But again, I don't want to be wrong. This is all speculation. So I do feel like on the first one that we were late. I wouldn't say a misassignment. We had guys that hesitated a little bit. It felt like at the linebacker
Mm.
position to get to that spot, right? And I felt like we got moved around a little bit up front. Can't happen, but you're going to have double team blocks where it's tough to hold your spot. But I feel like when you have a double team block, you got to work around or work over or work through. As a linebacker, you got to pick the best situation or the best circumstance for that play. And it felt like we hesitated a little bit, right? Instead of getting to that B gap or that A gap on the inside, we were kind of catching a little bit the block and weren't there in time, and we slowed down. So I wouldn't say as much as a missed assignment on that first one. It just felt like we were late, right? And then the second one to Donovan Edwards, I'm not even going to get into that. We talked about the refs. We talked about all that. I think that play should have been made, and there was something that was missed on that. But the last one, and probably the most important one, that third big time run
Mm.
to Mullings again, we got moved off our spot a little bit up front, right? And we lost gap integrity, which you can't do. But that play should not have happened, right? It should have just been John Humphrey and Kamari Ramsey made the tackle, 10-yard gain. Dang it, they got their first down of the second half. They got a 10-yard explosive play from Danton Lynn's standard of saying 10 yards is a big time play for them, and they still have 70 or 65 yards to go. I'm okay with them breaking through the first line of defense, especially how good we played that entire half. But you cannot miss that tackle. So that's what led to that big time play was the missed tackles by John Humphrey and Kamari Ramsey, and that turned a 10-yard run. And now they have 1st and 10, still have 70 yards to go at the 30 into a huge play that they get down in our red zone, and then they punch it in a couple plays later.
As a whole, though, this was another data point in the small sample size of Lynn's defense at USC that we have. What did you think about overall what we saw from USC's defense on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just answered that a little bit with a question or one of the questions about the in-game adjustments, which was phenomenal, right? And that's a huge boost of confidence in Danton Lynn. And I know obviously there's a lot of Trojan fans that already feel confident with him, but those in-game adjustments with a new group, right, and only your third game is huge to see because that's the sign of a good coach and a well-coached football team that, hey, we are getting destroyed in this football game in this category, but we can get it fixed and come out and make it a point of emphasis to stop it was unbelievable, right? And a big example of that is they had 220 yards in the first half on offense. In the second half, before that final drive and those missed tackles and that big run, they had 9 yards of offense. 9 yards. That was it, right? So I think that's super important. The other thing, like we just talked about, was, and I talked about at the beginning of the show, was the pass defense I thought was great. It didn't have to do much. I think their longest pass play of the game was 9 yards. I think their longest pass attempt was a little bit more than that. I don't know, but it was non-existent. It didn't have to be there. So I want to talk a little bit more about the run defense, right? And I think that's important. That's something that USC struggled with a year ago, was stopping the run. Okay, so this is my overall take on it from the defensive side of the football in the run game. I know everyone was frustrated with the numbers and the stats, but I kind of want to put it in context a little bit. Michigan had 290 yards rushing on Saturday. 290 yards rushing for any team is unacceptable, right? That is unacceptable. That can't happen. Danton Lynn will be the first one to tell you that, right? Anybody, Coach Henderson, Matt Ince, any of those, the front seven coaches, Sean Nua, unacceptable. That cannot happen. That is not a winning formula. They had 46 rush attempts for 290 yards. That's over 6 yards per carry. That is not winning football. That cannot happen. But I want to put it into context a little bit because Michigan, and we just talked about it, this is kind of a good leeway from those three big plays that you asked me about a second ago. When you put it into numbers, right? They had 3 big time run plays on the night that totaled 157 yards, right? So if you go 290 minus 157 is 133 yards. That is 43 attempts. Take away those 46, take away 3. That's 43 attempts for 133 yards, right? That is only 3 yards per carry. That is winning football. If you can hold an opponent like Michigan, who prides himself in running the football, to only 3 yards a carry, you can win and you can play with anybody. But in those big time moments, and this is an excuse. I'm not saying that, obviously they still had 290 yards. That's inexcusable. That can't happen. Over 6 yards per carry. But again, if you take away those 3 big time run plays, they only have 133 yards on the ground, and they only have 3 yards per carry. And we're talking about an entirely different game, right? But in those big time moments, you want to win those games on those big time stages against a big time opponent. Whoever makes those plays in those big moments is going to win the football game, right? And Michigan made them. And it's unfortunate. And it's tough because when a team runs a football 46 times, you expect them to break one loose. It's going to happen. It's inevitable, right? It's tough to be that efficient on defense in the run game for a team that's going to run it 46 times, right? You're going to have a couple.
Yeah.
3 big plays doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, right? 46 run plays, only 3 of them really broke for long plays. I know they had a couple 10 or 15 yarders, but only 3 of them were game-changing plays on the ground. Doesn't seem like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, especially with our offense not putting up a lot of points, those are game-changing plays, right? And Michigan made them and we didn't, and that's frustrating. But that's why I say I don't lose confidence in this defense, right? Besides that final drive for Michigan, before that, they didn't have 1 first down. They had 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out, and they only had 9 yards of total offense in the second half. Now, first half, we've got to get it figured out a little bit quicker. We can't let that happen or get into that big of a hole. But I love, and I'm still encouraged, what I've seen from Dan Lynn. I think he's absolutely the right person for the job. I think as this season goes on, we're going to see this defense continue to get better and better. And again, you just got to fix those big time plays that we didn't make on Saturday.
And I mean, you can put this in perspective, but I'm sure it's a hard ask for a defense to continually defend a physical team, defend their run game when your offense is not really giving you a break on the bench, right? Like that has to be exhausting.
That's what I think was a big factor in the first half too, and that's a great point, Keely. Is we had multiple 3 and outs in the first half. We had multiple terrible starting field positions, couldn't get anything going, punting it right back, and our defense had to go back out. And I promise you right now, there was a lot of mandatory ice bath recovery, spending a lot of time in hot cold contrast and recovering today, some DMS, the massaging machine, some ice packs going home, some take home, recovery stuff because of how physical that game was. But that's what we asked for. That's what we want. That's what we signed up for the Big Ten. So it's going to happen a lot more, not only this year, but years to come. And we got to continue to develop the interior of both this defensive line and offensive line and guys in the trenches if we want to compete at this level, because that's not only going to happen with Michigan, right? Penn State loves to run the football. I know they got Drew Lar, but they love to run the football. Iowa loves to run the football. I know we don't play all these teams this year, but there's a lot of teams that are in the top end of this conference that live and die by the run, right? So we've got to be able to stop that. And this was a great test for our defense. Did we pass it? I mean, I'm not going to say yes because of the outcome of this football game, but I think we showed glimpses of how good we can be and how good we can be under Danton Lynn and how we can get those things fixed mid-game. But yeah, it's frustrating because we were so close, right? I said, outside of those 3 big run plays, they only had 130 yards rushing, only averaged 3 yards per carry. So we were so close, but so closes and almost theirs aren't going to win you football games. And Dan Lynn and Lincoln Riley know this, but I expect them to get it fixed going forward. And I think we saw glimpses of how good this defense can be, and a lot of guys stood out on Saturday.
Just want to give a shout out to Zach, who basically his question was exactly the point you made about the 43 carries for 133 yards. So you and him are on the same page. Just want to give a shout out for that.
I'd love to take credit that I just hit the math there on the spot. But if you look at my notes right now, I mean, if you could see my notes, this is.
I have seen
for a post game show. Yeah, I sent it to you. But for the post game show, this was a ton of. Like I said, I watched this game 3 times. I went back and I really broke it down because I think this is an important moment in the season, and it's something that we can learn from. It's a make or break moment in this season. To where are we going to be down about it, and now everyone feels like the sky's falling, and this is we're back to not having confidence, and we feel like we're where we were a year ago in the second half of last season. Or is this a learning moment to where we can take this as an experience, learn from it, pick ourselves up, and use it as a positive? And I think that's what's going to happen for this football team and when you have a team that's under Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, and I mean, Riley was asked about that in the post-game presser. He said, Antonio Morales of The Athletic asked, after the Utah game in 2022, that was a moment for your team to like reunite and get back on track. But Riley said, I don't remember this, but apparently Riley said in 2023 that the team didn't turn around like they wanted to in 2023. So he was asked, Riley, what makes you think that this will be a 2022 year versus 2023? And Riley was like, the coaches and players and their attitude and their character that we have in that locker room, and I know like of course, after a loss, it seems like a participation trophy, but I was so impressed with the energy that USC's defense had coming out in the second half. Like, I just felt like the togetherness and the confidence that they had when maybe it wasn't necessarily warranted in the environment was really cool to see based on, what we've seen from other teams and their chemistry or lack thereof. You know what I mean? I just thought that was an encouraging sign.
Yeah, and again, that's a sign of a well-coached football team, a confident defense, guys that believe in their coaching staff, that believe in the scheme, that trust one another, that know that they are going to do their job because the other 10 guys around them are going to do their job as well, right? And again, I keep saying 290 yards rushing is it's unacceptable, right? That can't happen. And I don't want to sugarcoat it and say, it's okay, we'll get him next time. No, that can't happen. We'll get it fixed though. And the reason I fully believe that and feel confident in saying that is, like you said, because of the energy we saw in the second half. How many times do you see a football team or USC from years ago? Do you see either side of the football? I'm not just talking about the Lincoln Riley era. I'm talking about before that, all over the country.
Yeah.
It feels like if there's, consistent in the first half and we can't stop the run, it's just the entire game, right? And you accept it and you lay down and now we don't have an answer. We'll get them next week. No, we saw a dramatic change. 220 yards in the first half. Besides that final drive, 9 yards total for Michigan in the second half. That is the definition of in-game adjustments. Kyron Lacey in week 1, wide receiver for LSU, 7 catches, 94 yards and a touchdown in the first half, destroying us. Thought he was going to go for 250 and 4 touchdowns. 0 catches in the second half. There's just so many examples of that. Last week, Utah State. I hate going backwards. I know we're going forward, but first string's in there, shutout. Second string comes in, shutout. Third string comes in, shutout. Guys are chest bumping when the lights are going out in this last series of the game, and Danton Lynn's locked in. That's why I have so much confidence in this coaching staff and this defensive side of the football, and Danton Lynn and the guys around him and the staff that he brought in and the players that he brought to this team, or the guys that transferred here and the other veterans that have been here, that they're going to get this fixed, and this is going to be more of a learning moment than it is a downfall of the season.
Our next question is from Millers, who actually asked a question last episode.
Is this Miller's? This is the Miller burner account I thought from last week.
Yes, we thought that was his real name's Tyler. I looked at his profile, but I actually met him in Ann Arbor. It was great. So it was great to meet you. It's always fun meeting people, like put the face to the names and be like, oh my gosh, you're a real person and not
Did he hear? I don't know if you guys talked about it. Did he hear the Miller burner account joke?
I think I yelled it at him. I'm like, oh, you're not Miller or something like that.
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Cheesy Keely in the moment. Who knows? I think I did also meet his dad, someone that was with him. And the person who was with him was like, yeah, whenever he asks a question, he makes sure I listen to the episode too. And I was like, hey, get those numbers up. I love it.
There you go. Yeah.
So
there we go.
no.
What real quick on that, talking about Millers or just Trojan fans. How was, I don't even got to ask you yet outside of the podcast, how was the Trojan turnout at that? Could you tell?
Good. When USC took the lead, there were like some pretty good chants from, it was a good turnout. And I feel like this is half speculation, half seeing from my social media. It was a lot of like Midwest Trojans who came out to support, which I thought was cool.
Awesome. That's good. That's going to be so cool to see it at a lot of these away games now.
For sure.
So
yeah,
I'm getting off topic here. We're still on defense, but I thought it was. I was curious because you can't the stadium from the. Did you get to watch the TV copy at all?
I did. Yes.
They're checkered out or whatever they call it, or the maze and blue back and forth.
Yes.
Just the overview of that stadium, the Coliseum's the same way. Just some of the historic stadiums, but I was a little jealous that obviously rest in peace to Pac-12, but I was a little jealous that we didn't get to play in some of those Big Ten environments when I was at SC. So that was pretty cool to see.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it was cool for sure. And we got a question about the atmosphere, so we can talk about that.
Cool.
When we get into our questions. But yes, anyway, just main bullet point. Very nice to meet everyone when you're at a stadium, so thank you for saying hi, for sure. But he said, did Eric Gentry get a red carpet to the team bus? He left it out there in the big house. And this is obviously, Cody, something we've talked about on this show before. But again, Saturday was another game where we saw just a rejuvenated Eric Gentry. It just seems like he just has this spark under Danton Lynn and his scheme. And I actually have some stats to back that up. I was just perusing the stats after 3 games for USC, and Eric Gentry is now tied for 9th in the country at tackles for loss at 6.5. But he, in that top 10 range, he's the only guy who's played 3 games. Everyone else has played 4. So if you look at the average, he's second in the nation at 2.17 tackles for loss per game, which is a mouthful to say, but hopefully I got the point across.
Look at you. I'm normally the stats person that always looks up all that stuff. I like it.
I
We got a
perused it.
little yeah, that was a big word there too, drop. I'm like, I started looking that up on my
What, peruse?
iPad real quick. Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, quarterback Cody. It just means like to search,
Oh,
peruse.
there you go.
Yeah, there
Hey,
you go.
we'll take it. I'll tell you what though, that's I mean that's important. That just adds substance and credibility to what we've already seen, and we've been big fans of Eric Gentry, and it really feels like to me, and and obviously Miller's saw that too, but it feels like to me that we're talking about the 2022 Eric Gentry, right? That we
Mm,
were so excited about early on in that season, right? And I think back to going up to the Oregon State game or a couple big time plays to where he was a new transfer from Arizona State and we didn't really know what to expect from him, and this big, tall, kind of not your prototypical size for a linebacker, and the length that he has, but he's really found his own stride again here under Dan Lynn. And last year, we lost it a little bit, and there were times when he wasn't on the field in big time moments, and there was times that they had to rotate linebackers and figure out who that core group was going to be. I feel like that question has been answered this year, and a big part of that is because of how well Eric Gentry and adding Mason Cobb to that group as well, for kind of having, I love the word you use, rejuvenation, and getting back to the player that we know they can be. And I have Eric Gentry as our early season MVP on defense. I think there's a couple other guys, Mascarenas Arnold is up there.
yeah.
Kamari Ramsey and Keely Arnold have played well so far this year, but I really feel like Eric Gentry is the MVP of this defense, and just big time players make big time plays in big time games, right? In big time moments, and that punch out that he had to set USC up to take the lead. That's the textbook
Yeah.
peanut punch, right? The Charles Tillman play from Peanut Tillman back from the Bears day. That was a textbook punch out, recover the football for a bonus point, and then a couple plays later, USC goes down and scores. So he's been playing phenomenal football. It gives you so much confidence as a fan watching this game, and I'm sure his coaching staff as well, when he can play at that level. And the best way to describe him that we've heard a million times, he's a unicorn, right? He can
Mm-hmm.
play so many different positions. He can move around. Dan Lynn has used him at so many different spots, and he's so versatile. And that's the word that keeps coming up under Dan Lynn's defense. And to be able to play in the scheme, you got to be able to do multiple things. And Eric Gentry is that. And and again, I know throughout this episode, we've been critical, and you have to, right? You have to be critical. I know we're not coaches, we're not on the staff, but you have to be able to address issues that are going on with this football team. There's things that can be fixed from Saturday. There's things that can be fixed from wins against LSU, right? We've had concerns against Utah State, different things that have happened, but there are so many positives on this football team and so many good football players that can really elevate this team to the next level, and a great coaching staff. That's why I don't have as much of a concern when it comes to, is my speculation of this football team changed because of this last game? I don't feel like that. And Eric Gentry is a big part of that. And a lot of guys around him are too. So I have full confidence in this team going forward. But yeah, you got to give Eric his flowers. He's been playing phenomenal football.
Alrighty, Cody. Any other thoughts about the defense? Of course, we have questions to get to, but just anything on your mind before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much, this was the definition of emptying my notebook. I got a ton of them. A couple more things I think is important to talk about. The first one is third down. I think we've been phenomenal on third down. This is definitely a positive. We did a great job. I think Utah State was 1 of 11 on third down conversion, so that was great. The other day against Michigan, they were 4 of 15. They didn't have a first down in the second half until that final drive, right? They were 0 for. It was just multiple 3 and out. So that's great to see. That is winning football. Now, the opposite of that, a little bit of negative, but I think it's important to talk about. Michigan was 3 of 3 on fourth down, right? On those, gotta have it, game on the line, and one of those was that final play of the game to either win or lose. And they scored a touchdown on that. We have to be better on fourth down, right? And it does change. I talk about games within the game. Your third down playbook, your third and short playbook is different than your fourth and short playbook, right? And those are very small game planning sections, but they are important, right? The fourth down is almost like a 2-point play. You never know when you're going to need them, but they could be make or break moments in football games. So we've got to be better on fourth down. Them Michigan being 3 of 3 and one of those being the game-winning touchdown is unacceptable. Just have to be better there. And I know Dan Lynn will tell his team that and get that fixed. And then a couple other notes I had, just kind of to wrap all this up. A frustrating part. I loved it on a positive, but again, obviously this was a game that USC came up a little bit short. We have to be better when we play an opponent knowing what their MO is going to be for the day, right? We can't lose to a team that throws 32 yards, right? Passing. I know Alex Orji is a great athlete, but we held them to 32 yards passing. We need to find a way to win that football game when they can only move the ball one way, and that's on the ground. And look, everybody knew it was coming. The entire stadium knew it was coming. Dan Lynn and his staff knew it was coming. USC's defense, everyone watching from home, knew they were going to have to run the football to win. And outside of those three big plays, it looked very good, but we still have to find a way to get the job done and be successful in those type of environments and those type of games. And again, I don't have any doubts in my mind that Dan Lynn's not going to get this fixed and use this as great teach tape. But overall, I talked about a grade for the offense. I still don't know if this is a passing grade for defense, but there's a lot of encouraging things to see on film, but there's also things that need to be fixed.
Alrighty, let's head over into questions. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet, so you can focus on other things like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's Fresh for everyone. I'm fighting because I could see you get ready, Cody. For the ending.
Wow.
Take it away.
Fight on with a little bit of confetti.
There we go.
Boom.
There we go.
For those of you who are probably confused, I've had the settings on my computer to where you do like hand motions and stuff.
It's the reactions on your computer.
Balloons. Still can't figure out how to turn it off, but we're leaving it because now it's a staple on this show. But yes, Ralph's Fresh for everyone. Reactions. Fight on.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I was starting to laugh, but I could see you getting prepared for your moment.
It's like, I feel like that's my big moment every show.
It's your time
when we get to that ad read.
For sure. We have a question from Witch Bar who said, do you think this Michigan team made significant improvements compared to when they played Texas, or is Texas just that good?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts to that. The first part of it is Michigan is a good football team, right? And I told everybody on the preview episode, if you think USC is going to walk in there and it's going to be a cakewalk and we're the heavy favorite and it's going to be easy, you're badly mistaken, especially in Ann Arbor at the Big House. So, and perceptions of teams can change from week to week, right? You can continue to get better as the season goes on. You really don't know what teams' DNA are yet this early on in the season or what the storyline is going to be. And Michigan's a football team that won a national championship a year ago. They have very good football players on that team. So I think they're a very solid opponent. And I still feel like we had plenty of opportunities to win that football game. And it's tough, but I think if we played Michigan again, I'd love to see a rematch if we get a chance at the end of the year. But the second part of that, I think Texas is that good. I think Texas is in a league of their own. I think there's a couple teams in that category with Alabama, Georgia. Some of those teams are at the top of the top, and Texas is absolutely that. USC, Michigan, even though they won a national championship a year ago, I don't think are quite there in that tier one. USC can get there, right? There's a great culture in place. They've laid a great foundation, and Lincoln Riley and his staff has done a phenomenal job of really helping this program over the last 3 years or 2.5 years, and going into now his third season. I think we can get there, but yeah, that's why I say the second part of that question is Texas is absolutely in a league of their own right now.
We got multiple questions. John and Cameron wanted to know, why would Miller throw short of the chains on that last fourth down play?
Yeah, that was a little frustrating, and Matt Barkley tweeted about that. I saw his video that he posted. So the breakdown of that play, and that can't happen, right? And it was only a yard. It was very short, but you just have to be more aware in that situation. That comes down to football knowledge. That comes down to spatial awareness and knowing the situation. But the play initially was set up to be past the sticks, and Jacoby Lane ran a great route past the sticks. He was a yard or two past the first down marker, but Miller didn't look at him right away, so the timing got off. Then he started to scramble, and as a wide receiver, you're taught in scramble drill, and I think this is just second nature and something they've done before in practice, or you do in practice, that in the scramble drill you work back towards the quarterback to help them out to defend it from the DB making a play on it. It was just unfortunate timing that Miller scrambled, worked out, and Jacoby only being a yard or two past the sticks, coming back to the football, brought him short of the first down. But yeah, we got to have better situational awareness in that, and make sure that you throw the ball or get the ball past the line of scrimmage or past the first down marker to convert.
We got a question from Trojan Sam who said, against LSU and yesterday, Riley seems to be calling plays not to lose rather than to attack and win. I know there's offensive line issues, but all the tight end wide receiver screens didn't work, but he kept calling them as they were the safe option.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest point there, and then obviously they watch the game and they know it and they know football. The biggest part there was, and we talked about why Coach Riley was conservative in this football game. And I'm with you. I feel like I would love to see Coach Riley be a little more aggressive. And he admitted himself, I could have been better in certain situations as a play caller, and I think he will be. And I have no doubt about that. But I think the biggest part is the offensive line, being able to protect Miller. And it's tough to watch your quarterback keep taking those hits and wanting to call 5-step or 7-step drop passes over and over when he's taking those type of hits. And I think the other part of it, like I talked about, was field position issues. But at some point, whether you keep getting in bad spots and with field position backed up, or you're not, your offensive line isn't protecting, there's ways to fix that. And Lincoln Riley knows that, and he did a good job coming out of the second half. Trying a new 5 offensive linemen, moving guys from right tackle to left tackle, bringing Tobias Raymond in, and he had answers in game to fix that and put together some very good drives. But overall, you can do things to help that. I'm fine with quick game. I'm fine, instead of a screen pass or inside zone runs and running into those defensive tackles. I'm fine with quick slants, turn into a double move, maybe a couple hitches, a couple things on the outside. But yeah, I would have loved to seen Coach Riley be more aggressive, but there are factors that played, into that and forced him. And again, we talked about not to get into a rhythm with him and Miller, and it felt like maybe they tried to force things, but yeah, it's all game plan stuff, and it's tough as a fan when you watch those screenplays not hit, and you watch those little slide RPO routes not hit over and over and over, and you want them to push the ball down the field. But it's so tough when you don't get into a rhythm where you see your quarterback getting hit to trust calling some of those more aggressive play calls.
Trudy says, why does no one dare ask Coach Riley about his clock management? My question probably won't get selected as before, but it's a serious issue.
Okay, well, I'll start with this, Trudy. We always apologize if we don't get everyone's question asked on this show. We don't get to everyone's questions. It's never personal. It's just mostly a time management issue, or we talk about it before on the show.
Yeah,
and yeah,
we got to thread the needle between having an efficient show and getting your voice heard. If it's a very classic question that we've already asked, that's usually what happens. It's not personal, I promise, and we say it every episode.
Yeah, and we're not shying away from these. Obviously, Trudy's turning up the heat a little bit with this one, and it's after a loss, and rightfully so. We're not going to shy away from these, and we'll talk about it. But I'll say this, pertaining to the question, I feel like Lincoln does get called on that a little bit, or he got asked on that, and one that sticks out to me was the first game against LSU. If you remember, think back a little bit to the end of that first half, right, when he ran the ball with Woody Marks. Then he ran it again when he was sitting on a timeout with, I think, 15 or 20 seconds on the clock and could have taken a shot at the end zone. I think we were on our 20-yard line. Could have taken a shot at the end zone, and we had a timeout, so we could work the whole field, right? We didn't have to just work the sideline and try to stop the clock. But he ended up running the football, and we went out there and missed the field goal. And I remember Holly Rowe, I think, was a sideline reporter, right after it happened, right before he runs into the locker room. Holly Rowe asked him any regrets on running the football there, or that conservative call, or the clock management. And he follows up with, when you miss a kick like that, it looks bad. So, obviously some regrets, but we'll get it fixed. And I think the other one, maybe she's talking about this game, is why we got into depth on it. But talking about that 4-minute drive, right, and being able to run some more time off the clock, or his play calling selection on that drive, I think that's one of the first things he answered, right? And he's the type of coach, he's going to wear it on the chest and call himself out. And he said, I can be better in that situation. I've got to be better in that situation. So correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry, Trudy, if that's not exactly what you're talking about, but I feel like there have been times in the past where the media has called Lincoln out on maybe some of his time management stuff, and he's addressed it.
Rigo said, I'm trying to keep things positive, so can we talk about the punter and special teams? He did an amazing job, even when kicking deep from our own end zone. Really happy with how he's been doing, and I'm so glad that Rigo brought this up, because this is something that I thought multiple times during the game. I was like, Eddie Shaplitsky is just lights out for USC when his name is called, and the stats backed it up too. I looked it up. He's second in the nation right now in punting average, 52.09 per punt.
Wow. He's got all the stats tonight.
I don't know why I'm stats girl tonight, but I am.
I know, I love it. But that's it, Rigo. That's a great point. It is, and you got to give him his flowers. He's played phenomenal this year. I mean, it is, and people, sometimes special teams isn't talked about enough, right? And it feels like it kind of gets put on the back burner, and it's not an important facet of the football game. But when you have a punter like Eddie that can flip a field and is a major factor in this game, or in any game, he is an absolute weapon. And what I mean by flip the field is, there were times when we're punting out of our own end zone, right? Or we're backed up, and you have a punter that can punt it 50 plus yards, right? And it feels like, as an opposing offense, hey, we're going to get the football in great football, or in great field position. But when you have a punter that can punt it over the 50, back to the opposite 40, the opposite 30, and has that type of leg on them, it is an absolute weapon. And I'll tell you who loves them more than anybody is defensive coordinators, because you help your defense out by putting the team in a, not as great of a situation they thought they were going to be, instead of guys that shank one or don't have the leg strength to flip a field and do all that. So yeah, you got to give Eddie his credit. He's doing a phenomenal job. I know. And you always hear Pat McAfee talk, punters are people too, so
yeah,
that's true though. And we laugh at that, and it can be a joke. But when you have a punter that can flip a field, and especially in this type of game against Michigan, how many times we were backed up, how effective he is, it's very important to a football team.
And that's not an easy thing to do either. I remember, I think Baxter called it danger punt. It's
Yeah,
just
those quick hits
yeah.
when you're quick hits or quick kicks, but when you're yeah, a little self shout out. When your heels, and I've never done it. Well, I punted in high school, so I give myself a little
Okay,
credit. I
look
had to
at
do
you.
some pooch punting. I punted at SC too. Fun fact, you'll probably remember this with Sark.
Oh,
Yeah, we had a couple games where it was like we'd fake like we were gonna run
why don't I
a
remember
split out or
this?
four wide look. Yeah, I think Arizona State my junior year. I could be
Okay,
wrong,
I'll
but
look this
I
up.
do know I punted like one or two times. Terrible. Took me out. Never again. But yeah, when you have your heels on the back of the end line and you've got to get it out quick, and you have an 8-man rush or 9 guys sprinting at you trying to block it, you've got to be quick and you've got to be able to be efficient. He did just that. So yeah, Eddie's absolutely a weapon on this team, and I love that he's on our side.
Steve said, first, that was gut wrenching. Just needed to make one more play, but what a game. Could this loss be quote unquote good for the Trojans? Answer in a way that will make me feel better when he had a little laughing emoji. Fight on. Proud of our Trojans. Beat the Badgers.
Yeah, fight on, beat the Badgers. 100%. That's what I said. These are the type of moments, and I truly believe this. And again, it's not just me being optimistic or trying to make everybody feel better. I truly believe this is going to be a game if we continue to develop the way we are and keep playing the way that we are, and continuing to get better week in and week out under this coaching staff, especially on the defensive side of the football. And if we can address some of the issues on offensive line and get that figured out quickly, this is going to be a game we look back on that absolutely was a positive that helped us get to where we want to be at the end of the year, right? And it's still a long ways to go, and there's still a lot of football left to be played. But I think there's so many positives that we can take from this football game and the negatives we can learn from that's going to help this team going forward. And I truly believe that.
I know it's a cliche, but like there are truths in cliches. And one of the cliches I'm thinking of is just like when it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And I feel like this is one of
Yeah.
those games that like you're sitting on the bus and you're slicing it. And I'm sure fans felt this way too. Like shoulda, coulda, woulda, if this would have happened. I feel like as a player, does that just motivate you even more? Because I feel like for me, I would just be like, oh, give me one more chance to just get out there and fix it. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what, it's sometimes, in my opinion, and I didn't want to say this earlier because Trojan fans don't want to hear that right now. Everyone's frustrated. I'm frustrated. We're frustrated. The team's frustrated. It's a game, like you said, shoulda, coulda, woulda's all over the field. But I feel like you learn more in a loss than you do a win about yourself, about your team, about the type of mindset and mentality that you have. And especially in that type of environment on a national stage, first ever Big Ten opponent, it's going to help this team so much. But back to your question about what you said is, not to say that we weren't doing it before, but after a loss, it's a little bit more of a wake up call. And there's going to be an extra hour maybe at film study at night instead of going home. There's going to be an extra couple reps in the weight room at lifting. There's going to be a couple extra reps after practice on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday early on in the week to prepare you for Saturday. So it will wake you up a little bit and get you more locked in than you were before. And this team's already been, putting a ton of preparation and working hard. But when you have a loss like that, it kind of kicks you into an extra gear that I know this team can find.
I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but Rama said, for Keely, how was it being at the big house? First of all, someone asked me, when's the last time you've been to a new stadium? And I was like, outside of Allegiant, but like the first time I went to a college stadium was UW in 2019. So this has been a while since I've been to like a
Wow.
new college campus. So this is fun in that regard. So thanks to the Big Ten change there. But I thought it was, as you said, it was just so beautiful to see the grandness of it all and like the coordination of the colors and whatnot. And I was actually talking to one of USC's videographers, Luke, during a timeout or something, and he made me notice there are no ads in that stadium. It is just pure.
Really?
Yeah, like it's the exposed brick is just brick, like the scoreboard is just scoreboard. It was just like, and I know obviously
Wow.
things like change, and I think Michigan was actually talking about recently they might have to change that due to NIL, but it was just really cool to see like the purity of college football, if you will, in that stadium.
I mean, yeah, no, 100%. That's great. I mean, there's 110,000 fans there, and there's not one ad in that
But
stadium.
yeah,
That's
think
unbelievable.
about the ad dollars you could probably get being like this is the
Oh,
third
and
largest stadium in
I
the
mean,
world. Yeah.
they sell out almost every home game, so
Apparently
it's a
they have
ton
like
of
a
opportunity in there. So I love that though. That's cool. They're yeah, the NIL. That was funny. I was just thinking about how poetic and cool that was, and then you brought up NIL, and I said, yeah, that's probably gonna have to change now. But
yeah.
that's cool. I'm jealous. I wish I could have gone to that game too. But you got me thinking too. I can't wait for Happy Valley against Penn State. I know it's not this year, but
Yeah.
against Penn State at the Shoe, playing Ohio State, Nebraska, who
I
sells
know.
out
I
every
know.
single home game ever. So yeah, there's just so many new traditions and rivalries that are going to be made from the Big Ten. So if that's the taste of the first one, I can't wait to see
I
what's to
know.
come.
I know. And that's the cool thing is like it did give that. Oh, and that's the other thing. We were heading in, just me and the radio crew, and we were talking about like it is so cool that this type of matchup is a regular season game. Like this is the type of pageantry brand bravado, if you will, that you see for a last game of the season. This is the win it all type of game, and this is like, oh, this is a conference game. You know what I mean? Like it was just really cool to be like, this is our new normal. You know?
Did you see my tweet? I mean, you probably didn't because you probably didn't check my Twitter, but I'm live tweeting now for everyone. Cody
I
Kessler
had no
6
service in my
on
defense.
Twitter. Okay, fair enough. If you want to follow my live tweeting now for the games, but um, I literally got home from doing the pregame show at ESPN LA, watching the intro to it, right, and hearing Brad Nessler and
Also,
kind of leading up to
hearing
that,
them,
and the drone that was flying over, and I tweeted out, I said, I can't remember playing or watching, being this pumped for a football game, to watch a football game in the last couple of years, right? And obviously the Pac-12 championship a couple of years ago was great. USC, UCLA, to go or to win the Pac-12 South a couple of years ago was great. So those were some fun games to be in or to watch. And then some I played in against Stanford and all that. But in recent memory, that game was up there with just the lead up and the build up to it.
yeah,
And as soon as the broadcast started, I'm getting goosebumps and chills, and I'm like, man, I wish I was out there. I wish I strap the helmet back on and go out there and play myself. So
right.
had to be such a cool atmosphere to see in person.
And before we move on, just want to give a shout out to Michigan fans and staffers. So nice. Like you can just tell a fan base is nice. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. Like I don't have that much experience with the Midwest. I don't know if it's just like Midwestern charm and everyone's nice there, but like just super like the stadium staffers, the fans that I interacted with, everyone was super nice, and it just like puts such an extra special touch on things. You know what I mean? Because I've been in some
yeah. I mean,
hostile territories, and that's not fun.
you're a better person than me because I would struggle to find some positives to say about Michigan right now, but this I'm too competitive. But I will say though,
Yes.
that's a good thing to have, right? Especially a rivalry that's going to go for a very long time, and we got to have the same hospitality when teams come to USC. You can be competitive, you can get a little pushy, you can get a little uh, competition going, and getting not aggressive, but obviously teams care and fans care, but be respectful at the end of the day. Everyone
Yeah. Yeah.
has we all share the same love for college football, so that's good to hear. It seemed like the environment was amazing, and I can't wait in a couple years from now when we get to go back.
Zach said, and I believe this is going to be our final question of the night for us, Cody. He said, "What are your season record predictions following this loss?" I don't think we ever
Yeah.
made season predictions publicly. I don't think I even made it in my head. I don't even make game score predictions before we get to that segment.
Yeah, until literally the second before, and then you've
I know.
randomly predicted three perfectly, which I'm still salty about. But anyways, and also we both lose this one because we don't count wins on losses, do we?
No,
For those
no.
score predictions? Okay, same as when we do the player of the
Honestly,
games
what
for.
happens is I start winning too much and we stop talking about the score predictions. That's
Okay,
what
here we go.
happens.
You know what?
It's true.
I'm
I'm
locked
not
in this week.
making that.
I'm gonna predict perfectly the Wisconsin game
Okay,
now. I'm making it personal,
go
but
for it. I
um,
would love to see you
I
do
I
that.
think I did. I think I did. I said I think 10 wins was what I set the season at. I think 10 wins was doable. That would be I think successful season for USC. I think 10 wins also is enough to flirt with that lower seed in the playoff, to be a playoff contender. Who knows? It may be enough to be in the Big Ten championship, right? There's no East and West anymore. It's just the top two teams, right? And it's a very good conference from top to bottom. There's some good teams in this conference. I think Illinois is a sleeper pick. I think Indiana is a sleeper pick. They've looked
Mm,
really good. Nebraska, although they have a freshman quarterback, is a sleeper pick. Obviously, there's the favorites. I still think USC is in that tier one. I think Michigan maybe bump back up into that tier one. Ohio State it's looked good at times, a little shaky. Oregon started off shaky. They've looked good last week or against Oregon State. So I think it's still wide open. I don't think really anyone knows who that team is going to be to take over the Big Ten Conference or be the clear cut favorite. But in my opinion, I think back to the question, I think 10 wins is still doable. That's kind of what I put the marker at. I think that's going to be a successful season. I think the Penn State game is going to be tough. I think Notre Dame's going to be tough. They haven't looked as good as advertised early on, but they still have some good players on their team. So it's going to be a long season, right? That's why I'm still so optimistic. I don't think the sky's falling. I don't think it's the end of USC's football year. I don't think there's, it's not anything negative. Obviously, a loss hurts, and you can learn a lot from that, and you can take that and turn it into a positive. But I still feel fully optimistic about this football team and Lincoln Riley and this coaching staff. And I think we have the players and a very good quarterback. I think Miller is going to continue to get better and learn from some of these mistakes last game. And I think the sky's the limit still for this football team. And I fully believe we are still a Big Ten contender and possibly a playoff contender.
Honestly, +1, Cody. I don't think I could say it better than what you just said, but I agree. I also think the sample size is too small for me to suddenly change
Good
how
point.
I believe about this team. You know what I mean? Or what I think about this team is a better way to put it. But I think that's going to wrap it up, Cody. I know you always like to do some final thoughts. Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
My final thoughts are very repetitive. Look, I just said it right there a couple seconds ago. Don't give up on this team. Full faith in Lincoln Riley, full faith in Miller Moss and Dan Lynn and this defense. I think they're going to turn around. Keely, you said it great, to have that bad taste in their mouth and really go out there and learn from this. And I think it's going to be a positive. But I'm done. I love doing this podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode even after a loss. We tried to, like I've said multiple times, empty the notebook, talk about everything we need to talk about. After you watch this, just promise me you're going to put it behind you. 24-hour rule. Now I guess it's a 48-hour rule because it's going to be Monday. But Put it behind us. We're moving on. I have a guest to say goodbye, Coda, because I promised every episode at home he's going to be on it.
He made an appearance.
This is his Coda moment. I got to come over here with a treat. He's confident. You want more? He's
Coda,
confident
tell the
about
people
the game
the sky
this week.
isn't falling.
He gets a treat. What do you feel about this game this week against Wisconsin? Is USC going to win?
The crunching means
that's a yes.
Fight on.
Yeah, fight on. I'm done. Love you guys. It's been so much fun being around USC football. Hey, new week, positive week. Let's go out there and take care of business on Saturday. Pack the Coliseum. Fight on. I'm out.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up. You heard the man. We'll be back this week with a preview of USC Wisconsin, so be sure to enter any questions that you may have. But that's going to wrap it up. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.